Have you ever wondered why we're here? I don't mean in a philosophical sense. I mean, why did humanity, as a species, survive when so many others didn't? Think about it. Throughout history, our ancestors faced one apocalyptic event after another. Ice ages turned the world into a frozen wasteland. Supervolcanoes erupted, choking the sky with ash and blocking out the sun for years. Plagues swept across continents with no cure in sight. We were hunted by predators far stronger and faster than us. Famines left entire populations starving. The odds were stacked so impossibly high against us. One wrong move, one bad winter, one unlucky break, and the story of humanity could have been over before it truly began. Compared to the other creatures of the ancient world, we were, well, pretty pathetic. We didn't have razor-sharp claws. We didn't have bone-crushing fangs. We didn't have thick fur to protect us from the biting cold or tough hides to deflect attacks. We were soft, slow, and vulnerable. A single saber-toothed cat could wipe out a whole family. A harsh winter could freeze an entire clan. So, what was our secret? What made the difference between extinction and existence? The answer isn't just one thing. It's a combination of incredible, uniquely human traits that allowed us to not just survive, but thrive. While other animals were locked into their biological programming, relying purely on instinct, humans had a secret weapon: our minds. We didn't wait for evolution to give us claws. We sharpened stones and wood to make our own. We didn't wait to grow fur. We learned to use fire for warmth and skin animals for clothing. This is the core of our survival story: adaptation through innovation. Instead of being bound by our environment, we began to shape it. We learned to cooperate in ways no other species could. We formed complex social groups, hunted together, and shared knowledge. One person's discovery could become the entire tribe's advantage. We developed language, allowing us to pass down vital information from one generation to the next. Stories weren't just entertainment. They were survival guides, teaching children which plants were safe to eat, how to track animals, and where to find shelter. We were building a collective intelligence, a shared brain that grew with every person and every generation. This ability to learn, to communicate, and to work together was our superpower. When a new threat emerged, we didn't just react. We strategized. We observed patterns in nature. We experimented, we made tools, and then we made better tools. From the first controlled fire to the first sewn garment, every single innovation was a step away from the brink of extinction. We learned to anticipate the changing seasons, to store food for the lean times, and to build communities that could support each other through hardship. Our greatest strength wasn't physical. It was social and intellectual. So when we look back at our fragile beginnings, the reason we're still here becomes clear. It wasn't brute force. It was brainpower. It wasn't instinct alone. It was ingenuity and collaboration. We are the descendants of the thinkers, the toolmakers, the storytellers, and the cooperators. The story of humanity's survival isn't just a tale of enduring hardship. It's the ultimate story of how ideas, shared and built upon, can overcome any obstacle. It's the reason you and I are here today, able to ponder this very question. The first topic is a planet trying to kill us. Take a look at our planet today. Green forests, blue oceans, bustling cities. It feels like home, right? But rewind the clock. Go back tens of thousands of years, and you'll find a very different Earth. An Earth that wasn't trying to be our friend. In fact, it was a planet that seemed to be actively trying to kill us. For our earliest ancestors, survival wasn't a given. It was a brutal, daily fight against a world that was unpredictable, harsh, and often lethal. Imagine living in a world where the very ground beneath your feet and the sky above your head were your biggest enemies. The climate was a monster. It swung violently from one extreme to another. Think of ice ages that lasted for thousands of years, swallowing vast continents under sheets of ice a mile thick. These weren't just cold winters. They were planetary deep freezes that erased the entire ecosystems. The plants and animals that early humans relied on for food, gone, wiped out by the relentless cold. Then, just as suddenly, the planet would heat up. The ice would retreat. But this wasn't a gentle spring. It was a chaotic meltdown. Melting glaciers unleashed catastrophic floods that could reshape entire landscapes overnight. What was once a dry hunting ground could become a raging sea. And these warmer periods brought their own set of horrors. Scorching droughts that turned fertile lands into dust bowls. And with the changing environment came new, unfamiliar diseases for which our ancestors had no immunity. The very concept of predictable seasons, something we take for granted, was a luxury they didn't have. A food source that was abundant one year could completely vanish the next. Imagine the constant gnawing anxiety of not knowing if you'll eat tomorrow or next week. Early humans had no advanced technology to shield them from this chaos. No permanent, insulated homes. No modern medicine to fight infections or cure illnesses. No refrigerators or granaries to store food for the long, lean times. If the animal herds migrated unexpectedly, or if a vital plant failed to grow, starvation wasn't a distant threat, it was an immediate reality. Entire groups of people could weaken and perish in a matter of weeks. And if the climate and hunger weren't enough, there were the neighbors, and they weren't friendly. The ancient world was ruled by predators. Giant cave bears, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves. These were the true kings of the landscape. In this lineup of prehistoric beasts, humans were far from the top of the food chain. We weren't the strongest, we weren't the fastest, and we certainly didn't have the biggest teeth or claws. A lone human caught in the open stood virtually no chance against these specialized killing machines. Nature, in its raw and unfiltered state, doesn't care about intelligence or potential. It only rewards immediate strength and adaptability. In Tatarena, we were at a severe disadvantage. On top of all this, the planet itself was physically unstable. Natural disasters were a common occurrence, on a scale we can barely comprehend today. Imagine a supervolcano erupting, spewing so much ash into the atmosphere that it blocks out the sun for years, triggering a volcanic winter that cools the entire planet. Earthquakes didn't just rattle buildings, they tore the land apart, creating new mountains and valleys. Powerful storms, far more intense than any hurricane we see today, could rip through the landscape, destroying the simple, temporary shelters our ancestors built. Rivers would flood without warning, forcing entire communities to flee the lands they knew and venture into unknown, hostile territories. In this kind of world, extinction wasn't a rare event. It was the norm. The fossil record is a graveyard of species that once dominated the Earth but couldn't keep up. Many of them were stronger than us, faster than us, and physically better adapted to their environments. Yet, they vanished forever. By all logic, humans should have been one of them. We were a small, scattered, and incredibly vulnerable species. Our numbers were tiny. A single, brutally harsh winter, a failed migration across a barren landscape, or a fast-spreading disease could have easily wiped out entire populations, erasing our lineage from the face of the Earth. There were countless moments in our deep past where humanity teetered on the brink of complete annihilation. But something remarkable happened. We didn't vanish. Faced with a planet that was trying to kill us, our ancestors didn't just give up. They responded in a way that was utterly unique. They started to observe. They noticed the subtle patterns in the chaos. They remembered which plants were poisonous after a dry spell, where the herds went when the first snow fell. They developed something more powerful than claws or fangs: collective memory. They shared this knowledge, passing down warnings and survival strategies through generations. Instead of just reacting to danger, they started anticipating it. They adapted their behavior instead of waiting for nature to change for them. The planet was hostile, yes, but humans refused to accept defeat. This relentless struggle against an unforgiving world didn't just make us tougher, it fundamentally shaped the very core of what it means to be human. Survival was no longer just about brute force or raw instinct. It became about something more. It became about planning, about strategy, about working together. It became about thinking ahead, and this newfound ability to think, to reason, and to cooperate would ultimately become humanity's greatest weapon, allowing us to not only survive our hostile homeworld, but to eventually master it. The second topic of our discussion is when humanity almost ended. Did you know that you and I might be alive today only because a handful of our ancestors refused to give up? There were moments in our deep past when humanity came terrifyingly close to being wiped out forever. And I'm not talking about millions of people. Scientists studying our genetic history believe that at certain points, the entire global human population may have plummeted to just a few thousand individuals. To put that in perspective, that's smaller than the number of people living in a small town today. A population that small is incredibly fragile. It's teetering on the edge of a knife. One major disaster, and it's game over. Imagine Italiano. A sudden, widespread disease for which there's no cure. A dramatic shift in the climate that freezes the land or turns lush forests into barren deserts. A collapse of the primary food sources, leaving everyone to starve. Any single one of these events could have erased our story before it even had a chance to begin. And these weren't just hypothetical threats, they were real, and they happened frequently. Our planet has gone through dramatic cycles of ice ages and warming periods. During long periods of extreme cold, vast glaciers covered much of the Earth, shrinking the amount of habitable land. Entire regions that once supported life became frozen, unlivable waste. This forced our ancestors into a desperate struggle for survival. They had to abandon their homes and migrate into unfamiliar territories, often for thousands of miles. As they moved, they were constantly competing for survival, not just with other animal species, but with other human groups as well. When resources are scarce, tension is inevitable. Hunger doesn't just weaken the body, it wears down the mind and fuels conflict. In conditions like these, most species fail. It's not because they are inherently weak, but because the pressure is so intense and continuous that they simply can't recover fast enough. One disaster after another just grinds them down until there's nothing left. But humans did something different, something remarkable. When our numbers fell to those dangerously low levels, we didn't just scatter and die. We adapted socially. Our small, scattered groups reorganized. They developed new rules and new ways of living together. They started sharing resources more carefully, ensuring that what little they had went to those who needed it most. Crucially, they protected the most vulnerable members of the group, the children, who represented the future, and the elders, who were living libraries of essential knowledge. Survival ceased to be an individual struggle and became a collective mission. Think about it this way. Most animal species rely almost entirely on biological reproduction to recover from a population crash. They just need to have enough babies fast enough to rebuild their numbers. But humans relied on something else. Something far more powerful: culture. Culture is a transmission of knowledge, skills, strategies, and stories from one generation to the next. Even when the population was tiny, the ideas survived. These ideas were the ultimate survival guide. Our ancestors remembered which plants were safe to eat and which were poisonous. They knew which animals were dangerous predators and which could be hunted for food. They memorized the paths that led to life-giving water sources and the seasons that brought floods, storms, or droughts. This collective memory was like a safety net. It gave small struggling groups a chance to rebuild, to learn from the past, and to avoid repeating fatal mistakes. But survival wasn't just about remembering old tricks. These near-extinction events also became powerful engines of innovation. When the old ways of doing things failed, our ancestors didn't just give up. They experimented, they created new tools, sharper spear points, more effective traps. They developed new hunting strategies, learning to work together to take down large prey that a single person could never defeat. They designed new types of shelters, better insulated against the cold or better ventilated for the heat. Failure wasn't the end of the process. It was a critical part of it. Every broken tool, every failed hunt was a lesson. This ability to learn from mistakes, to adapt our behavior, changed everything. While other species had to wait for slow genetic evolution, over thousands of generations to adapt to a new environment, humans evolved their behavior. We could adapt within a single lifetime. A person could learn a new skill, invent a new tool, and teach it to their children, giving them an immediate advantage. This speed of adaptation was unheard of in the natural world. And perhaps most importantly, our ancestors did not face extinction alone. They faced it together. Communication, cooperation, and shared problem-solving allowed these tiny populations to survive situations that, by all rights, should have wiped them out. Every single survivor was a precious vessel of knowledge. The skills they carried, the stories they told, the discoveries they made, all of it increased the chances of survival for the next generation. Humanity didn't just survive because we got lucky. We survived because we were relentlessly flexible. We were social, we were clever, and we were cooperative. And this incredible flexibility, forged in the fires of near-extinction, prepared us for something even greater. It gave us a survival advantage that no other species on Earth possessed, and set the stage for our journey to becoming the dominant species on the planet. The third topic of discussion is why we survived while others didn't. When you look back at the long, brutal history of our planet, a pretty big question comes up. Countless species, some far more powerful and physically impressive than us, have come and gone. They dominated their time, ruled our lands, and then vanished. So, why are we still here? If survival was so difficult, how did our relatively fragile ancestors make it through ice ages, famines, and encounters with terrifying predators, while so many others didn't? The answer isn't what you might think. It's not about brute strength. It's not about speed. and it was definitely not just a string of good luck. Let's be honest, early humans were not at the top of the food chain. We weren't the fastest runners, the strongest fighters, or the most efficient hunters. Animals like saber-toothed cats, giant bears, and mammoths were physically superior in almost every way. If survival was just a physical contest, our story would have ended a very, very long time ago. So, what was our secret weapon? It all comes down to a fundamental difference in how we approach the world. Most species operate primarily on instinct. Instinct is an incredible biological tool. It's a pre-programmed set of behaviors that helps an animal find food, avoid danger, and reproduce. And for millions of years, in stable environments, instinct works perfectly. A bird instinctively knows how to build a nest. A fish knows which currents to follow. It's efficient and reliable. But what happens when the environment stops being stable? What happens when the climate suddenly shifts? When a reliable food source disappears? Or when a brand new predator shows up? This is where instinct becomes a liability. An animal that is hardwired to eat a specific plant will starve if that plant dies out. A creature that instinctively migrates to a certain region will perish if that region becomes a desert. Instinct is slow to change. It relies on genetic evolution over thousands, even millions of years. When crisis hits fast, instinct can't keep up. This is where humans took a completely different path. We didn't rely solely on instinct. We relied on something much more dynamic: learning. Think about it. When a hunting strategy failed, our ancestors didn't just try the same thing again and again. They remembered the failure. They analyzed it. They talked about it. They tried something new. When they ate a plant that made them sick, they learned to avoid it and taught their children to do the same. When a makeshift shelter collapsed in a storm, they didn't just build the exact same flimsy structure. They figured out what went wrong and made the next one stronger. This ability to learn and, crucially, to pass that learning on, was a revolutionary leap. This is what we call culture. Knowledge didn't die with the individual who learned it. It was shared through language, through stories, through demonstration. A father could teach his son a better way to nap a flint arrowhead. A mother could show her daughter which berries were safe to eat after a frost. This created a kind of software evolution that was happening on top of our much slower biological hardware evolution. Instead of waiting eons for a genetic mutation to grant a slight advantage, humans could upgrade their survival strategies within a single generation. This meant we could respond to change faster than any other complex species on the planet. Another critical piece of the puzzle was our incredible flexibility. Most animals are specialists. A panda is perfectly adapted to eat bamboo in a specific type of forest. A polar bear is a master of the Arctic ice. Specialists are amazing. They thrive when their specific environmental conditions are met. They are the undisputed champions of their niche. But what happens when that niche disappears? When the bamboo forests shrink or the Arctic ice melts? The specialist is in deep trouble. Their greatest strength becomes their greatest weakness. Humans, on the other hand, became the ultimate generalists. We weren't locked into one environment or one food source. We could live near rivers and fish. We could live in forests and hunt deer. We could live on open plains and track herds. Eventually, we even figured out how to survive in frozen tundras and scorching deserts. How? Because we didn't just adapt our body, we adapted our tools, our clothing, and our strategies. If we moved to a cold climate, we didn't wait thousands of years to evolve thicker fur. We learned to use animal hides to make warm clothes. We designed better shelters to keep out the cold. We developed new hunting techniques for the animals that live there. Our minds were our key to unlocking every environment on Earth. This adaptability wasn't just about tools and location, it was also social. Human social structures were not rigid. We could change our group sizes, our leadership styles, and how we divided labor based on what the situation demanded. In times of plenty, groups might be larger and more dispersed. In times of scarcity or danger, we would band together, cooperate more intensely, and follow the lead of the most experienced individuals. If hunting large game became too difficult, we could shift our focus to gathering plants, roots, and smaller animals. This social flexibility was a huge advantage. Where a pack of specialist predators might starve when their primary prey vanishes, a human group could pivot. Failure wasn't the end for us. It was just more data. Every mistake, every failed hunt, every collapsed shelter was a lesson. This created a powerful and relentless survival cycle. Experience leads to learning. Learning leads to improvement. And improvement leads to survival. This loop allowed human populations to recover from catastrophes that would have been an extinction-level event for other species. A devastating flood or a sudden drought wasn't just a tragedy. It was a powerful motivator to innovate. It drove us to develop food storage, to dig wells, to build levees. It turned near-extinction events into moments of profound adaptation. And this incredible ability to learn, to adapt, and to remember was about to be combined with the single most powerful force in human history: large-scale cooperation. It wasn't just about a small family group surviving. It was about tribes working together, sharing knowledge over vast distances, and building something far greater than any one person could achieve alone. Our survival wasn't written in our muscles or our claws, but in our minds and in our connections to each other. We didn't just survive, we learned how to thrive. The fourth topic of our discussion is the power of standing together. Have you ever wondered how we, as a species, went from being vulnerable creatures on the savannah to the dominant force on the planet? It wasn't because we were the strongest, the fastest, or the biggest. The secret to our survival, our greatest superpower, is something much more profound: our ability to stand together. Imagine the ancient world, a lone human, facing predators, harsh weather, and the constant threat of starvation. It's a bleak picture. The odds of survival would be incredibly low. But here's the thing: humans were never meant to survive alone. From the very dawn of our existence, cooperation became our defining trait, our ultimate advantage. It's the invisible thread that weaves through the entire story of humanity. Think about it. Early human groups shared everything, especially food. This wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a brilliant survival strategy. When a hunt was successful, the entire group ate. This meant that a single hunter's bad day, a failed attempt to find food, didn't result in immediate starvation for them or their family. The success of the few became the security of the many. This simple act of sharing created a safety net, a buffer against the constant uncertainty of life. It meant that the group as a whole was far more resilient than any single individual could ever be. This wasn't just about sharing meat. It was about sharing the risk and sharing the reward. It was the first, and perhaps most important, economic system. This cooperative spirit extended beyond just food. Groups actively protected their most vulnerable members, the injured and the elderly. Now, from a purely cold, logical perspective, this might seem inefficient. Why spend precious resources on those who can't hunt or gather? But our ancestors understood a deeper truth. The elderly were not a burden. They were living libraries. They held a collective memory of the group. They remembered the location of distant water sources, the signs of a changing season, which plants were safe to eat and which were poison. They recalled the solutions to problems the group had faced years, or even decades, before. Protecting the elders meant protecting a priceless repository of knowledge, wisdom, and experience. In a world without written language, their memories were the key to navigating a dangerous and ever-changing landscape. And then there were the children. Unlike many other species, human children have an incredibly long period of dependency. We invest a massive amount of time and energy into raising our young. This, too, was a strategic advantage. This extended childhood wasn't a weakness. It was an opportunity. It allowed for something revolutionary to happen. Learning could replace pure instinct. Skills, complex language, and intricate survival strategies weren't just hardwired into our brains. They were taught, passed down carefully from one generation to the next. The group worked together to guard the children, ensuring that this vital transfer of knowledge could happen, securing the future of the entire community. Of course, none of this would be possible without the engine that drives all cooperation: communication. It started simply, with gestures, sounds, and facial expressions. But as our ability to communicate evolved into complex language, our power to cooperate grew exponentially. We could now warn each other of distant dangers, share detailed information about resources, and, most importantly, plan together. We could coordinate our actions with a level of sophistication that no predator could ever match. Hunting was no longer a frantic, individual effort. It became a strategic operation, with different roles, coordinated movements, and shared goals. Defense against predators became an organized, collective effort. Even large-scale migrations across continents became planned expeditions, not just random wanderings. The evidence is clear in the historical record. Groups that mastered cooperation survived and thrived. Groups that were fractured by internal conflict simply vanished. This constant evolutionary pressure made cooperation a deeply ingrained part of our human nature. It doesn't mean disagreements disappeared, of course not, but the overwhelming, shared goals of survival, protection of the young, and the continuity of the group always took precedence. These common objectives acted as a powerful glue, keeping communities united even in the face of internal squabbles. It's from this need for unity and coordination that leadership began to emerge. But early leadership wasn't about power or force. It was built on a foundation of trust, experience, and proven wisdom. The best hunters, the wisest elders, the most skilled communicators, these were the individuals the group looked to for guidance. Cooperation also gave us a powerful psychological tool: control over fear. Imagine facing a massive cave bear alone. The natural reaction is panic, and panic leads to fatal mistakes. But when a group faces that same bear together, the dynamic changes completely. Individual fear is tempered by collective confidence. Instead of a chaotic, panicked response, the group can act as a single, coordinated unit. This collective response dramatically reduced errors and increased the chances of success, whether in defense or in hunting. Perhaps the most significant aspect of our cooperative nature is how it allowed us to share knowledge, not just within a group, but across generations. One person's tragic mistake became a cautionary tale, a lesson for everyone. One individual's clever discovery, a new way to shape a flint arrowhead, a better technique for starting a fire, quickly became a shared advantage for the entire community, and for their children and their children's children. No other species has ever built its survival so fundamentally on this principle of shared, cumulative learning. We didn't just learn from our own experiences. We learned from the experiences of everyone who came before us. This created a powerful feedback loop. As the world around our ancestors became harsher, perhaps due to climate change or new predators, their need for cooperation only grew stronger. As the dangers increased, their unity deepened. This is the essence of our story. We didn't just survive on this planet. We adapted to it together. Through the power of standing together, humans created something that would forever change the game of survival. Tools, planning, and intelligence, all working together as a single, integrated system. This incredible foundation of cooperation set the stage for our next great leap forward, using the power of our minds to overcome our physical limitations and shape the world around us. The story of human success is not a story of individual heroes. It's the story of us. It's a testament to the fact that we are always stronger together than we are apart. The fifth topic of our discussion is brains over claws. Have you ever wondered how we, humans, with our soft skin and lack of sharp claws, manage to survive, let alone thrive, on a planet filled with giant predators and formidable beasts? We weren't the strongest, not by a long shot. We couldn't outrun a saber-toothed cat or overpower a woolly mammoth. In a straight-up fight, we were hopelessly outmatched. So, what was our secret weapon? It wasn't in our muscles, but right here, inside our heads. Our ancestors possessed something far more powerful than any tooth or claw: the ability to think ahead. This changed everything. A hunt didn't start with a sudden appearance of prey. No, it began long before, in the minds of our ancestors. They were master strategists, studying the world around them with incredible focus. They observed animal behavior, meticulously mapping out migration routes and identifying patterns. They learned the art of patience, knowing precisely when to strike, when to hold back, and, crucially, when to avoid a fight altogether. It wasn't about being the toughest in the moment. It was about being the smartest over time. This new way of thinking gave birth to innovation. Tools became an extension of the human mind and body. A simple, sharpened stone wasn't just a rock. It was a knife, a hammer, a weapon. It could cut through hide, crush bones for marrow, or serve as a last line of defense. And then came the spear, a true gift. Suddenly, our ancestors could hunt from a safe distance, dramatically reducing the risk of injury or death. The playing field was starting to level. But why stop there? Why rely only on what you can hold? The human brain imagined new possibilities. Traps were a stroke of genius. A well-placed pitfall or a cleverly designed snare could do the work of many, multiplying human strength without requiring any physical confrontation. It was pure efficiency, born from intellect. This wasn't just about finding food. It was about fundamentally rewriting the rules of survival. This forward-thinking ability was a superpower. Our ancestors could run simulations in their minds, playing out different scenarios and imagining the consequences of their actions. How would the herd react if they approached from the north? What if the wind changed direction? By thinking through these possibilities, they could avoid costly mistakes before they ever happened. Trial and error became a mental exercise, not just a physical one. This saved energy, resources, and most importantly, lives. Problem solving wasn't just a skill, it was the very essence of being human. If a stone tool broke, they didn't just discard it. They analyzed why it failed and designed a better one. If a hunting strategy didn't work, they went back to the drawing board, brainstorming new tactics. This constant cycle of innovation, learning, and adaptation allowed them to improve at a breathtaking pace. Their knowledge grew with every success and every failure. Even something as primal as fear became a tool. Other animals reacted to danger in the moment, a burst of flight or fight. But humans began to anticipate danger. They didn't just run from the predator, they thought about where the predator might be hiding. They prepared for the worst-case scenarios, building stronger shelters, storing food for lean times, and posting lookouts. This proactive mindset was a revolutionary advantage. Over thousands of generations, this trait was honed and passed down. Intelligence became our defining survival characteristic. The groups that planned better, communicated more effectively, and learned faster were the ones who thrived. The smartest, not the strongest, inherited the earth. This mental edge allowed our ancestors to do the impossible, to expand out of their original homelands and conquer every corner of the globe. They moved into frozen tundras, arid deserts, and dense jungles environments where they had no natural physical right to be. They adapted not by growing thicker fur, but by figuring out how to make clothes and control fire. Their brains turned their physical weaknesses into their greatest strength. Intelligence wasn't just an advantage, it became our identity. And with this incredible power of foresight and planning, humanity was standing on the precipice of a discovery that would forever alter our destiny and change the face of the planet itself. The journey was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The sixth topic of our discussion is fire changed everything. Have you ever wondered what the single most important discovery in human history was? The wheel? Agriculture? Writing? They're all huge, but there's one that came first. One that fundamentally changed our destiny. I'm talking about the mastery of fire. Before fire, we were just another species, surviving at the mercy of nature, limited by daylight, cold, and the constant threat of predators. After fire, we began to control it. This wasn't just a discovery. It was the moment we started to become human. Imagine a world without warmth. A world where the setting sun brought with it a chilling, life-threatening cold. Before fire, human migration was dictated by climate. We were confined to the warmest parts of the planet. But with fire, suddenly, freezing nights and harsh winters became survivable. A simple campfire created a bubble of warmth, a microclimate that allowed our ancestors to venture into new territories, to explore and inhabit lands that would have otherwise been deadly. This expansion wasn't just geographical, it was an expansion of possibility. The seasonal limits that once penned us in began to dissolve. We were no longer just fair-weather survivors. We were becoming masters of our environment. Fire was also our first great shield. In a world teeming with powerful predators, early humans were far from the top of the food chain. A lone human in the dark was an easy meal. But fire changed the rules of the game. Animals, even the most fearsome ones, have a natural instinct to fear flames. A crackling fire kept saber-toothed tigers and cave bears at bay. The darkness, which for millennia had been a realm of terror, became a little less frightening. The campsite, once a vulnerable place to rest, transformed into a fortress of light and safety. This newfound security was revolutionary. It gave us a chance to sleep soundly, to rest and recover, which is crucial for any species' long-term success. It was a psychological shift. For the first time, we weren't just hiding from the night. We were pushing it back. But the most profound transformation fire brought wasn't external. It was internal. It happened right inside our bodies, all thanks to one simple act: cooking. Raw food is tough to chew and digest. Our primate cousins spent a huge portion of their day just processing raw plants. Cooking with fire broke down tough fibers and proteins, making food much easier to chew and digest. This saved an enormous amount of energy. More importantly, cooking unlocks nutrients that are inaccessible in raw food and kills harmful bacteria and parasites, making our food supplies safer and more reliable. All that extra energy had to go somewhere, and scientists believe it went straight to our heads. The human brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ. It's only about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our calories. The calorie-rich, easily digestible diet made possible by cooking is thought to have fueled the rapid expansion of the human brain. A bigger, more powerful brain meant greater intelligence, better problem-solving skills, and the capacity for complex thought. In a very real sense, the flames of the first campfires helped spark the flame of human consciousness. We weren't just eating to survive anymore. We were eating to think, and think we did. Before fire, the day ended when the sun went down. Darkness brought all activity to a halt. But with a campfire, the day was extended. These precious extra hours of light were a game changer for our social development. The evening, Once a time of fear and inactivity became a time for community. Around the flickering flames, our ancestors gathered. They weren't just huddling for warmth, they were communicating, connecting. This is where culture was born. Around the fire, elders could pass down knowledge to the younger generation. Hunters could share stories of the day's successes and failures, teaching vital survival skills. It was here that myths, legends, and the first oral histories were shared. The fire was the first classroom and the first theater. It strengthened social bonds, fostered cooperation, and allowed for the creation of a collective memory. Knowledge was no longer limited to what one individual could learn in their lifetime. It became cumulative, passed down, and built upon through generations. The firelight didn't just illuminate the darkness, it illuminated our minds and bound us together as a society. Fire was also our first great tool for creation. It wasn't just for warmth and cooking. Our ancestors learned to use it to shape their world. They used fire to harden the tips of wooden spears, making them far more effective hunting weapons. This simple technique gave them a significant advantage, allowing them to take down larger prey more safely. Later, this understanding of heat and transformation would lead to one of the most significant technological leaps in history. The ability to use fire to smelt ore and forge metal. First copper, then bronze, then iron gave us tools and weapons of unparalleled strength and durability. From plows that tilled the soil more effectively to swords that built empires. It all started with that fundamental understanding of fire's power to reshape materials. Each innovation, each step forward, increased our control over the environment and our own destiny. Perhaps the most significant impact of fire was the shift it created in our thinking. For millions of years, our ancestors were reactive. They responded to nature's whims. They fled from predators, sought shelter from storms, and foraged for whatever food was available. They were, in essence, subjects of the natural world. Fire marked a turning point. For the first time, we weren't just reacting to our environment, we were actively changing it. We could create warmth where there was cold, light where there was darkness, and safety where there was danger. This new mindset, a mindset of proactive control rather than passive submission, became a core part of the human identity. It fostered curiosity, experimentation, and innovation. If we can control this powerful element, what else can we control? This newfound confidence fueled a cascade of discoveries that propelled us forward. We were no longer just another animal trying to survive. We were becoming engineers, scientists, and artists, actively shaping the world to suit our needs and desires. When you put it all together, the warmth to survive new climates, the protection from predators, the nutritional boost for our brains, the social bonding around the campfire, and the power to craft new tools, you see a species undergoing a radical transformation. Fire gave humanity a survival advantage that no other species could ever hope to match. It was the ultimate catalyst. Before fire, our extinction was a real possibility. After fire, survival seemed almost guaranteed. The question was no longer if humanity would make it, but how far we would go. The journey from a fragile species on the African savanna to a civilization that reaches for the stars began with a single spark. A spark that ignited our world and our future. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey back in time as fascinating as I did, do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shaped us. Let me know in the comments what you think was the second most important discovery in human history. See you next time.